Hello, everyone, and welcome to another content week, excuse me, in MHA621. Let me adjust my camera here so you can see my face. Contact, oh my God, I'm saying it again. The content is fraud and abuse this week. There is also some pretty interesting supplementary materials on the Blackboard site. Um, really like you to engage in the documentary To Err is Human. I think some of you might have certainly heard of the landmark document published way back in 99 and 2000, again entitled To Err is Human, which really summarized the issue we have in this country with medical errors. Well, this is really a film take on it, and done, I think, very well done. There's also a reflective survey that I'd like you to engage in as well, so we can get some feedback, and I'll share that feedback with the class. It fits in well tangentially. Oh, I'm having a hard time speaking today. Um, to this topic. We're not really going to talk about medical errors here, but I think it's a nice fit. So why don't we start with the content for this week as well. What you have is certainly in this module. Hopefully, you'll be able to identify issues of fraud and abuse in healthcare from a big picture perspective, from an organizational and provider perspective. And you're also going to be tasked with working on an assignment regarding a legislative healthcare bill, either one that is uh, being signed into law or didn't quite make it through the legislative process, but in analyzing the impact, which I think will be useful for to understand that process from a number of perspectives. So let me start by summarizing just some big picture things with fraud and abuse. First of all, I think you've all heard of these terms, but when it comes to healthcare, um, there is certainly a difference, and that's the idea of intention. Fraud is when an individual or perhaps an organization, but let's speak about individuals, intentionally deceives. Um, and usually, this misrepresentation is to obtain more revenue, more money, sometimes property. Um, for the most part, fraud is connected to insurance programs or some sort of vendor, but primarily insurance programs. So you'll see quite a bit. Medicare and Medicaid, primarily Medicare, have a massive office of fraud prevention. It's a huge because it is an extremely large, the largest, as I like to say, health insurance system in the country. Abuse, on the other hand, is when, for the most part, providers, but sometimes also suppliers, their actions either directly or indirectly result in costs to a program. Those costs could be financial, they could be in resources. The difference is having to do with intentional. Well, fraud is very intentional. And so we think about not just abusing, if we're focusing on abuse, think about abusing systems. Now, I think any of you who have been in any type of leadership position, whether it be in a healthcare organization or not, understand that, and so you are supervising individuals, that there can be abuse of systems. What do I mean by that? Of, let's say, workplace time. Time is something where abuse happens, especially on the job. Um, Individuals who perhaps are on the job, are present, but are not there because they're spending their time doing other things as well, personal things. Excuse me. Might that be abuse of the system? Directly, indirectly, perhaps. Um, as we all know, in many aspects of healthcare, because it's a 24-hour operation, we don't exactly have supervisory eyes, perhaps on individuals 24/7. Might there be abuse of time, and I'm focusing on time because it's the one that really where most, let's say, counseling, employee counseling occurs as well. So anyone with an HR background understands that it's also perhaps a little more challenging for individuals in a leadership position to, oh, they might suspect it, to prove it, and that might not be in the best interest as well. So let's summarize. This is a nice little image that I found and adapted. We started talking a little bit about errors and mistakes, and to err is human as well. So we start at that end, you know, for the most part, unintentional, whether it be by an individual or because a system is set up that way. Um, you will be exposed to inefficiencies and waste, especially in one particular course in the program, and really how to root out that waste. But for our discussions, these are the two. I like the term bending the rules, bending the policies as well, stretching them as far as they can go, maybe taking them in a new direction. And that's all categorized perhaps with abuse. Fraudulent behavior is intentional. And so that unfortunately has ramifications on individuals, on the system, especially because it's connected to not just patient care, but also revenue. So let's talk about some examples. Um, for the most part, these are issues of fraud. And as you can see, it really relates to reimbursement or insurance. And so the most common two are insurance or bill for services that are never received, or perhaps equipment that was never received. Documents are altered to gain higher payment, casually noted as upcoding. And so every healthcare service that's enacted has to have a code, for the most part, either a CPT code associated with it. And because of the nature of how our healthcare system works, healthcare, dental, um, the claims are filed with insurance carriers after the service is rendered. And so to increase the code, or to suggest that a service was more than was actually provided because it results in a higher reimbursement, is actually one of the most common forms of fraud, and challenging on a regular basis, although becoming less so, challenging to prove. Now, certainly the idea of misrepresentation, using someone's insurance card, um, that does occur, probably not as common as, the first two, but I remember when I first launched out of my MHA program myself, I was tasked with being part of a team that looked at uh, insurance compliance. And it was quite obvious that the providers, physicians, and the medical team were, for the most part, absolutely doing nothing intentionally. It was just lack of knowledge and common practice, which perhaps or uh, or the system was set up so they were naturally either upcoding or downcoding. And so there was just as much downcoding, uh, essentially coding a service where they could have gotten more revenue was legitimate, happening than upcoding, as opposed to anything else. And so a lot of knowledge was needed, and then change in practice as well. Medicare is, as I said before, the one area where this is probably more rampant than, again, unintentionally, than anywhere else. However, the intentional aspects do happen. And I don't think it matters what the healthcare service is. So why is this important for all of us, all of you in particular, um, to be aware of? Because it sets the tone perhaps in a unit or an organization. Let me go on a little bit further and add on to that in a second. Yes, sorry, I had a couple other things that I wanted to talk about, and then I'll get back to my other point. Um, so another example here, more so of fraud, is having an unlicensed person perform services. Now that is really that was hard to really accomplish just because of settings. It becomes a little bit easier, especially as we have shared agreements, as an example, with nurse practitioners, perhaps with physician assistants, highly qualified individuals, um, certified registered nurse. I'm going to butcher this. I always do it. Anesthetist. Okay, I said it right. Certainly highly qualified, skilled, board certified practitioners who are clearly licensed, but and they're performing services as well, especially CRNAs, and but sometimes there's lines that are crossed over as well. Uh, I'd like to focus a little bit on ownership arrangements and kickbacks because this has become one of the most common areas in all where perhaps the notice of fraud and abuse can occur in healthcare. And so I think some of you understand this quite well. For many ancillary services, I hope I'm spelling this right, ancillary services. What do I mean by that? Um, X-ray, physical therapy, those services. Um, the ownership, much of it was separate organizations, and it still is, but there's a lot of provider, especially physicians, or a physician group who has part ownership in these services. Very common arrangement is for orthopedic surgeons to have ownership in a physical therapy company or organization. And so the referral that happens are seamless, are natural, are efficient, and yet certainly the idea of this notion called supplier induced demand occurs. So if we think about the orthopedic surgeon as the supplier of services, they're really inducing demand through these referrals. If a patient goes to see them for some sort of injury and they require physical therapy, or certainly physical therapy post-operative, um, there's a natural inclination to refer their patients to the physical therapy company that they know the best, but they also have partial ownership in it. Now, certainly an individual can go anywhere they want, but it's hard to do that when your surgeon is recommending a therapist and keeps in touch with that therapist as well. There's nothing illegal about this at all. It's an ownership arrangement. And in fact, it leads to more efficiencies and perhaps even better care provided. And yet, there's a tendency for abuse to occur. There's a tendency for other ancillary services to be left out as well, even if they might be the more appropriate venue. It's also common, certainly, dental practices in other types of diagnostic, X-rays, MRIs. And so those arrangements really perhaps bring up what I think my mother used to say as the smell test. You know, if it doesn't smell right, then you want to investigate it. I guess a pretty wise woman. So, this topic, in conjunction, certainly has makings of legal aspects of healthcare, but also delves into the ethical notion as well. Now, as perhaps employees and leaders in organizations, certainly for individuals who are employed in these. There's a sense that this is how the world of business works. And yet, looking at it from the user perspective, from the patient perspective, there might be other um, other questions that are brought up. And so I think understanding how different arrangements are made, certainly it has become more prominent, particularly in certain specialties for the most part, orthopedics, cardiology, OBGYN, sort of the high end type specialties tend to have more ownership agreements, uh, which work well, uh, except it might lead itself to potential abuses. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that for now. Please check out everything on the Blackboard site as well. Let me know if you have any questions then, folks. Okay, thank you very much.